Hi, and welcome to episode 12 of Data Product Mindset. I'm Anthony Cosgrove, the co-founder of Hoarder. Hoarder is a private data marketplace platform for governing the discovery, access, and use of data products. Today, I'm joined by Amiel Shapiro, formerly VP of Product at Echo, an e-commerce experience platform. He's now a fractional CPO, working with teams to build cutting-edge tech products and figure out and execute their strategy. Amiel, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your current role? Sounds super interesting. You get to work with all of these teams, building their products. It sounds fun. Tell us more.
Yeah, great. So what I currently do these days, I work with a small selection of really interesting companies that are building great stuff. I join them fairly early stages and help them figure out really how they're going to execute on their product strategy, figure out that their product strategy is properly tied to their business strategy. And sometimes it's even earlier and we're really kind of figuring out the bigger vision and where this can go and what additional opportunities, but that's sometimes when data comes into play also. I've got some really amazing companies I'm working with right now, very exciting times.
Awesome. And how often does that kind of involve kind of data as a product as opposed to a core product that's maybe more software or tech based?
So the companies I've been working with, they usually don't think necessarily upfront that they are building a data product. But I think that nowadays, if you're building something that actually has impact in the world, then you're probably using data in a very sophisticated way, and you're probably somewhere able to maybe do something interesting with data. And sometimes you need to kind of look at things a little differently to see that you're actually maybe collecting data that no one else has access to, and what you can do to monetize on that. Like, there's a lot of, I think, you know this better than anyone else, there's a lot of opportunity growing in the data product space. There's a lot of new interesting ways to use data and new and interesting ways to monetize on it.
Cool. And when we sort of talk about products and when you think about kind of data products and data product management, how do you approach that? Because you kind of already started to allude to it a little bit, right? So starting to think kind of a bit more strategically and maybe earlier on in that journey about the data, you're collecting, the use cases for that data, how that's either kind of woven into a product or becomes a product in and of itself. So I'd love to hear kind of how you think about it, how you approach it. And then obviously, if you can give any examples of data products you've built or been involved in, that's always super interesting.
Maybe I'll actually start with an example, and then maybe the conclusion will be, so currently I'm working with a health tech company, let's say. They don't even necessarily think of themselves as a health tech. They think of themselves as an innovative health service. It's really a new kind of way to treat people that have neurological issues. It's very interesting, leveraging a lot of different basically building a kind of platform that can leverage a lot of different technologies, bring them into the mix, and then create like new care plans that are innovative and don't exist anywhere else, and can really help patients that are currently kind of maybe the moment they're out of any immediate danger, not really treated anymore. So the main goal there is to build a service, and then to build like a technology wrapper that enables providing that service in the best possible way. But once you start, you need the data. First of all, we planned to collect the data that occurs through all the different types of treatment measurements, medical measurements, that in order to provide the best service possible, right? That's the idea. You kind of want to track your patients well, to see what's working well for them and what's not working well for them, and how you can iterate on the care plan so that you continuously provide the best possible care plan. But once you start, taking a step back, zooming out and thinking big picture, we kind of, saw this opportunity here. We're basically building a very interesting data set that no one has, because we're collecting a lot of different data points along the way per every single patient. and aggregating that in various ways to, one, identify things that really work well for everyone, things
Mm.
that, specific conditions that can impact the recovery, and so on and so forth. And that's really interesting. And if you plan that ahead, just in terms of like collecting the data properly and organizing it properly, it's easy to imagine a future where this becomes a significant product that we can do a lot of interesting things with.
Perfect. That's like just super interesting as a use case. And I think it kind of goes back to that idea that you were saying earlier around kind of zoom out a little bit, look at it a
Yeah,
bit strategically, maybe
exactly.
quite early on. Have you
Yeah.
kind of course corrected a little bit in terms of how you're collecting the data or how you're structuring it, or are you storing more than you otherwise would? Can you give us a feel for
Uh,
that?
in this
Are there
in this
significant?
specific case, yeah. So it's very early stage. So we're still kind of designing, slightly ahead of building. But yeah, we've definitely thought a lot about this, and taking it, the ability to think about this strategically and with a vision in mind, has helped us plan this well. Kind of identify, one, if we're working with partners, we need to understand data ownership
Yeah.
and data governance, where the data is going to be, how we manage it. Obviously, it's healthcare, so there's all kinds of regulations involved as well. But like,
Mm.
being smart about it up front, I think, is very helpful, because it kind of allows you to make sure, we're going to make probably a lot of mistakes on the way, and fix them. But at least we have in mind this idea that, yes, we want to collect all the data. We want to make sure it's well organized. We want to understand, and start thinking about these use cases, just so we can kind of imagine, okay, so we might sell this as an aggregated data set for whatever type of company, and we might, kind of imagine that, and then have that, make sure that we're not doing anything that will then, hold us back going forward.
Perfect. Awesome. And it sounds like that's maybe born out of some experience. I don't know if that's positive experience, painful experience, but maybe you once had to remediate a bunch of data in order to extract value from it
Yeah.
and not. So I assume that's right. It feels like one of your lessons that you would promote is starting to think quite early on in the process about uh, data products and data as a product,
Yeah.
and how you at least establish
Yeah.
a foundation that is net negative, ideally positive. Is that right? Am I making that up? And are there any other kind of critical lessons that you would sort of throw into the mix?
I think you're very right. I think it's also, even if you're thinking very small, thinking internally, right? It's going to be, our internal team is going to want to analyze the data to kind of evaluate our performance as a company, right? Usually, kind of something simple, and you're like, okay, it's just these guys that sit in the other room, so we don't need to really do that much for them. I think if you, one, those two people in the other room might end up being like a huge group of hundreds of analysts. If you plan kind of ahead, then you know that your data is going to be valuable, definitely internally at some point, and possibly externally. So I think kind of being ready for that at all times, like being, it's sometimes, just like a little bit of more attention and a little bit more work to make sure you're kind of, even internally, thinking of things as data products and not just this kind of pile of data. Then you're already, one step ahead. It's easier to onboard new analysts and data scientists. It's everything, just keep that one step ahead. Keep it all in mind. I think that's a really important lesson. Another big lesson for me, uh, in my previous job, I was mainly VP product, but I ran marketing at a certain point in time. Then I also ran data, and I think, actually, in while working in marketing, the ad tech space is very advanced in terms of data products. They've like been ahead of the curve for obvious reasons, and making money off of data for a long time now. And not all, we don't all necessarily always love everything they're doing, and it's not always perfect, but it's very practical. And I think, if you look at, for example, one of the things that inspired me in the health tech product currently is this idea of CDPs and how they collect, which is customer data platforms for anyone who's not in the space. They collect a lot of data around their customers. Then they sometimes sell anonymized versions of it to various stakeholders. There's a lot of things they do, but really they're built for a scalable, significant data product that can provide you a lot of different both insights and then also practical in the moment usage. And I think I've been, because I've explored that space a lot, it's helped me kind of think of analogies in different spaces and how you can build your own PDP, right? Patient data platform, whatever.
Awesome. And then, kind of as you were talking earlier, I think you made the comment of, if you're building a technology product in particular, the chances are that's going to use data, and data is going to be a significant part of that. With this sort of idea of like, let's kind of keep an eye on those foundations, and let's do, as you said, a little bit of work just to make sure we're not kind of defeating our future selves and having to a very large kind of remediation program, or kind of try and build something up that's been thrown away or whatever it happens to be. Kind of, where would you sort of draw the boundaries for that, right? Because sort of doing that with kind of all of the data that an organization might have, kind of feels a little bit like kind of boiling the ocean. But maybe that's wrong. I mean, I'm kind of interested in your take on, is that for a subset of things? I'm building a tech product, data is going to be very integral to that. Therefore, there's adjacencies and it's worth doing. Or is that more broadly?
It's a good question. And I assume in a way, I think some of the data that you work with, you don't even notice exists, right? Because it's kind of trivial, right? Whatever the kind of environmental data that so happens to be in your space doesn't necessarily mean all that much to you, and you don't always measure it. First of all, I think the most important thing is to kind of be aware of the data that is special to you. One, special because you use it a lot, but also often special because you're either uniquely positioned or rarely positioned to see it, collect it, and do stuff with it. So you need to focus on those things that are top and key, and really take very good care of those. But I think generally, if you can have a general habit, let's call it, of collecting everything, storing it nicely, if it doesn't cost you too much and it isn't too big of a deal, I think you will often find that there's like that one level beyond that can actually be useful, right? So sometimes you don't collect timestamps for everything, but then when you actually want to measure how long things take, I don't know, why do we collect timestamps for all that? So it's like, it's usually not that difficult to actually kind of overdo it a bit, as long as you're not letting that bog you down and slow you down and not do the thing that you want to focus on. But okay, I don't like, better safe than sorry is a bit of an annoying phrase, but collect if you're. It's actually a place where it's okay to be a hoarder, right? So,
Yeah.
I have a hard time parting with my belongings. So similarly, may as well collect more.
Cool. And sort of, you're obviously coming at this very much with a product management hat, right? So having been VP of product in a tech company, and now working with these other companies around tech products, and then the data foundations for data products, which are within or adjacent to their core product that they were originally building. Kind of, how do you approach data products differently to tech products? Like, do you have like a different way of engaging with that, a different way of thinking about that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I guess on one hand, I think maybe think of a lot of things that even are not products at all from a product mindset, right? Sometimes I think of like my role at a company as a product, or right, whatever, department you're building is also some form of a product that serves. So I'm, maybe too much of a product manager, right? Hard to get that out of me, and I think of everything a bit like that. But I think that with data products, they're a bit strange in terms of their I don't know, commercial life cycle, let's call it. It's not the same. Like when you sell something that's very clear, it's very clear what service or product you're selling. It's much more tangible. People can easily understand what it is. I think with data products, you usually need a customer that's a bit more savvy and a bit kind of understands why there is value in this data product. Sometimes you have to help them understand why and how by taking that extra step and making it not just a data product, but maybe an actual more tangible thing that it essentially is a data product, but has an experience wrapped around it.
Yeah,
I think that's one challenge that you can often see. I think like also there's something about generally no one actually comes and buys data, and no one is really just in the business of buying data, right? People want to buy a business impact or a type of insight that will help them do better. So I think it's important to understand that and not just kind of assume, okay, I'm collecting data, it's a gold mine, someone will come along and understand the value of it. No, I think you really need to understand how people can leverage this data, and really showcase that. What is this insight that you can provide, or what is this real-time decision that you can enable that otherwise doesn't exist? And I think that's really important to kind of understand that, like, there's the raw material
yep,
that exists, but you have to kind of show what you can actually do with it. That's one
yep.
step beyond.
Perfect, awesome. And kind of with that in mind, there's obviously a lot of focus at the moment on data products. Lots of definitions flying around. Lots of people trying to work out how to build them, how to take them to market. How to scale them. Kind of where do you see data products heading? Because, like you said, you've been in an industry which is maybe further ahead than other industries, and you've been grounded in that. And now you're working with these companies who are sort of have an eye on data products whilst building tech products, or have gone a bit further down the road than that. So kind of where do you see it going? Where do you see it heading?
Well, first of all, there's the obvious thing, and that's also why we're talking, is that obviously it's going to be more, data products are going to continue becoming much more of a thing. They're definitely going to be in more need as AI advances, new models evolve. You want to train them on new types of things to be able to do more complicated stuff, right? It's already become trivial to say the model is only as good as the data you feed it, right? That used to be something smart people say. Now everyone says it, and it similarly, it's still be smart. People say it's very ubiquitous. I think similarly, I think any product these days that actually has impact, especially like a digital product, actually has impact, can probably, as we said before, can probably evolve a byproduct that is a data product. And I think we're going to see much more of that, much more of these like interesting niche opportunities where people all of a sudden have data products. And I think it's going to become gradually easier to plug into that and leverage that elsewhere. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the connectivity probably improves. There's going to be a lot of new tech also around how you transfer data, use data that comes from different products in your own tech. I think that's going to be very interesting.
Awesome. That's cool. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, so sadly, we're going to have to end it there. But Amiel, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for sharing those experiences and examples. They're like super interesting, particularly sort of imagining sort of the healthcare plan data product. And how people might start to use that. That's an amazing example. I think it might be the first healthcare example we've even had on the show. So thank you. You can connect with Amiel on LinkedIn. And if you need some help with setting out the strategy for your product or building the right foundations for a data product, he's the guy that can help. And if this was useful and interesting, please feel free to check out the other episodes of the podcast on harbordata.com. Thank you for watching.